Nature can be devastating. More and more each year, we're seeing the adverse weather patterns and terrifying storms all over the planet. A large number of it is due to climate change, due to man-made pollution. Floods, landslides, storms are all becoming the norm in many places as the climate goes from bad to worse in settlements. Amidst the waves of chaos, we can find stories of heroism, daring, and selflessness. There are those who abandon everything and save others with little regard for their lives. These are the stories that stick with us. Hiroshi Nomura was a resident of Mabi town in Kurashiki, Japan. He was a rather laid-back and non-serious guy, a person who would laugh and joke around with his friends whenever he would have the opportunity to do so. The events which follow would not only change his life, but his perception in the eyes of the townfolks as well, as Hiroshi did something which would forever be remembered. It was a time of severe rainfall in the Kurashiki region of Japan. Emergency alerts and warnings of flooding due to the rains were sent out by the government, and although a lot of people did evacuate the area, many couldn't. Hiroshi himself was watching the World Cup live from his car. Hiroshi had drove the car up a hill in order to save it, while his parents stayed in their house and hoped for the best. And then, the rains fell on Kurashiki. It was a bleak Saturday morning when the downpour began. It wasn't showing any signs of stopping anytime soon. This torrential rain was breaking all records, and the citizens of Japan were worried, and rightly so. In this dark and depressing state of events, Hiroshi would find a hero within himself. He messaged his family when the flooding was getting worse, hoping to get a reply that they were all safe and secure, but the reply never came. He waited a while, but now things were taking a turn for the worst. Hiroshi knew that he had to do something, but what could he do when the streets and houses were all flooded? Hiroshi walked over to his neighborhood on foot and waded through the water to his house. Looking at the dismal conditions, he said, "I tried to be prepared for the reality," referring to the possibility of finding his family dead. Little did he know that at the moments to come, he would have a monumental impact on the people of his town. Knowing that he could not do much on his feet, he went to his car and took out an inflatable boat. He was fond of going fishing with his friends and kept that boat in his car at all times. This time, the boat would not be used for recreation, but rescue. He filled the boat with air from a nearby filling station and sailed it back in his house. He tried shouting, hoping for some answer from his parents, but none came. He saw floating debris and electrical wires and couldn't help but fear the worst. As he was about to take drastic measures, it seemed that the heavens had smiled upon him, and he received a call from his father, informing Hiroshi that they had been rescued and were safe. Hiroshi breathed a sigh of relief, but that was short-lived. He looked around the neighborhood and saw people on roofs, barely clinging on to life amidst the dangerous waters. The water was rising quickly and time was running out. Their pleas for help would not go unanswered. Hiroshi was recorded saying, "When I saw them, I felt that I had to help them, so I started to rescue them." He used his recreational boat to rescue the people stranded on their roofs and in need of help. According to rescue protocol, he gave greater priority to children and the elderly who were the most in danger of being carried off by the deadly rapids. After them came the men and women. For hours and hours on end, he went back and forth, rescuing everyone he could. He sailed through treacherous waters and saved those who were trapped and facing certain death. To someone who was on a roof and had no hope of rescue, seeing Hiroshi and his raft may seem like a mirage. Fortunately, it wasn't, and Hiroshi was sailing back and forth for the sake of the ones who were pleading for help. With each trip, he began to feel his strength leaving his body, unfortunately. He had never paddled so hard, nor did anything like that before, and now he was losing his energy fast. Was this to be his end? Was he to be a martyr? He tried paddling until the very end, but it seemed to have no use. His hands became flimsy, and his body grew numb. After such an extreme ordeal, he collapsed, then and there on the very boat that had saved a lot of lives. He then drifted wherever the floodwater took him. He wasn't completely abandoned, though. No good deed goes to waste, and Hiroshi had done so many this momentous day. He was spotted by some survivors drifting away. They swarm over to his near unconscious body and helped him row the boat back to safety. Hiroshi used the last of his strength to row away from the danger. After getting to safety, Hiroshi was knocked unconscious due to the overwhelming exhaustion. He was cared for, however, and an ambulance was called to take bold Hiroshi to the hospital. He went on record saying, "Maybe some called the ambulance, and from that point, I don't remember anything. I regained consciousness when I got to the hospital." According to Hiroshi's father, when he was being taken to the hospital, he kept insisting that he must go back and save the ones left behind. This is as brave as it is heartwarming to hear. When he awoke, his family and friends showered him with rightful praise. He had just risked his life to save about 20 people. Hiroshi, who was never considered bold or heroic by any means, but was a carefree and easygoing individual, turned out to be the biggest hero of the day. He single-handedly saved the survivors, and when others saw Hiroshi, they promptly followed his standard. When Hiroshi collapsed, others took his place and continued on the rescue operation. He was a hero, and an inspiration. Hiroshi, however, has stayed modest despite his selfless acts. He insists that he is no hero and that anyone else would have done the same thing in his place. Talk about having class. His family, most particularly his parents, are proud of him, and rightfully so. They were surprised when they heard of their kid's deeds, though pleasantly so. Hiroshi had to spend a few days at hospital, but he left to help participate in the cleanup efforts. The flooding and the resultant devastation had destroyed Mabi town. The streets were covered in debris as the houses were falling apart. It was a sorry sight to see. Adding to that, the recent heat wave cracked the mud and made it all the more harder to clean. Belongings and furniture were piled up along the roads, and many had lost their homes. The death toll was depressing. Over 50 people were killed during the flooding, with around 11 still missing. It was one of the worst tragedies to ever befall Japan in history, and its horrors would forever be cemented in their hearts and minds of the survivors. Alongside the memories of loss and destruction, the idea of Hiroshi and what he represented would likewise be immortalized. He represented the selfless will and dedication to the preservation of human life. His efforts and his story would never be forgotten. There you have it, folks. An unlikely hero from humble beginnings, rising to the challenge and saving countless lives. It is stories like Hiroshi's that inspire us and teach us that we all have a hero in our heart. It only needs an opportunity to come out and change lives. What about you? Have you ever done anything like Hiroshi, and have you known someone who has? Let us know in the comments.